So, yeah, one of the new kids on the block, I think. So, some quick words on Skeydrone first. As a subsidiary of Skies and Brussels Airport Company, we were created from the belief that we could evolve our airspace to a medium where all airspace users, so both manned and unmanned, would have equitable access rights. So we are not there yet today, obviously. An airspace where operators of unmanned aircraft would be able to navigate their drones in the most safe and efficient manners. So in an integrated rather than a segregated manner. So also there, we are not there yet today. So that's our belief, that's our dream. And how are we trying to achieve that dream is by doing multiple things. Only listed one of or a couple of them. We try to assist both the national but also local authorities, such as the Port of Antwerp, for instance, in building and executing roadmaps that allow the gradual implementation of drone operations in the most challenging environments. Obviously, we are also building and trying to provide risk mitigation toolsets, the so-called traffic service or use-based services, to operators of unmanned aircraft, allowing them to prepare and safely execute their flights in those challenging environments. So, and by doing so, of course, we hope to become, and that's the ambition, to become one of the first European use-based service providers as from next year onwards. So, very quickly on our contributions in this particular project, SAFIR-Med, we, together with the partners, co-designed, I would say, the use-based concept of operations and the underlying use-based system architecture. And we take the lead in coordinating the Antwerp-based demonstration trial. And in that demonstration trial, we obviously take up the role of use-based service provider. So that would be us in the big circle. On the ecosystem diagram, interfacing on the left side, of course, with the command and control center, with the drone operator side, and on the right side with basically our mother company, also taking up their role as a future common information service provider. I would like to spend maybe a couple of minutes, if that's okay for you, Manish, in
Go for it.
Briefing you on how I think we could pave the way towards the implementation of drone operations in an urban air mobility context. So what I would like to call urban airspace operations. And I think one of the first questions to be asked and answered is, do we have the necessary legislative and regulatory framework? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, we have that use-based framework, but I think there is a but. Because implementing use-based in an urban air mobility context will come with additional and specific challenges that will require, most obviously, dedicated attention and dedicated answers. Try to highlight some of those challenges while going through that cycle of starting with how to design that urban airspace up to how are we going to manage that airspace and also traffic flying in that urban airspace. So I think one of the particularities of drones and drone operations in urban airspace is that they are and will be interfering directly with our daily lives, with the lives of citizens, and with the daily ongoing activities, economical and other activities that take place in our cities. And that's something we have never experienced before in aviation, except maybe for the immediate surroundings of airports. So designing urban airspace, that will imply the involvement of all those impacted local stakeholders, citizens, public entities, cities, law enforcement, firefighting, etc., etc. And there's a very interesting but related question to that, and that is, who is owning that airspace? Do I, as a citizen, do I have a saying in who will be allowed to fly above my piece of private property, above my garden, and up to which height or altitude would that then be? Or do I, as a public entity, have something to say on that piece of airspace above my public assets? Can I potentially commercially exploit that piece of airspace? So I think those are the aspects that require more research and more discussions and dedicated attention in a European regulatory context. Next thing, obviously, to do then is to design that airspace. And designing airspace is also always a trade-off between capacity and safety. The more you increase capacity, the more challenging it becomes to manage safety and try to reach that acceptable level of safety. And we have been talking, discussing in the SAFIR-Med project on the free routing concept. But I do think that that is a concept that is only going to work or in a very initial phase where you don't have lots of operators of operations, or in a very advanced phase where we will have very advanced and automated traffic management systems and drone platforms. So I think in the first phase, we will need to design urban airspace with a hybrid of several airspace structures, both dynamic and static airspace structures, layers, corridors, a combination of various types of airspace structures. So that brings us then by the question, who is then going to, after having designed the airspace, who is then going to manage that airspace? And obviously that will no longer be the responsibility of the air navigation service provider. But will it be the sole exclusivity or responsibility of use-based service providers? And what about the legitimate concerns that public entities might have in guaranteeing and managing the risks, safety, security, privacy, risks that are associated with the public assets they are operating, they are managing? So I think designing an airspace management concept that that addresses those needs of local stakeholders, while at the same time remaining also workable from a safety and efficiency perspective for drone operators. That will be one of the key things to be worked on, and that's what we are doing also in SAFIR-Med, I think. And then last building block, the last but not least, of course, is managing the traffic in urban airspace. And there I think we have the framework. It's called use-space, and it will be up to use-space service providers to manage traffic also in an urban air mobility use-space context. But there might be some add-ons needed, again, to take care or address the needs of those local impacted stakeholders. We might be working on interfaces to involve, to communicate, to inform those local stakeholders on who is authorized to fly where and when, for instance, both citizens and public entities. So implementing, for me, use space in an urban air mobility concept in context will obviously be something that will be done in a phased manner. We have had a first phase after the entry into force of the first wave of European legislation in 2020. We had some first proof of concept, trying to demonstrate the more advanced, the more risky flights in the specific category. Now we are about to implement use space, but I do believe that prior to transiting to use space, because we will not have use space everywhere as from January 2023 onwards, there is a framework to scale the operations in the more risky category, so the BVLOS operations, by applying EASA's easy access rules and some of the generic frameworks in there. And that's something we'd like to discuss with several CEAs. So implementation of use space will then come 2023, 2025 timeframe, and when traffic density will increase and technology will mature, both automation and connectivity will increase, then we will, at a certain point in time, 27, 2030 timeframe, need to evolve also to the more advanced phases of use space. So I think projects as SAFIR-Med are very important to learn together with new stakeholders, with new actors in an emerging ecosystem, and to apply the lessons learned in our day-to-day operations. But also we should be able to continue that learning journey, because I think there are many more things to be worked on and tested and validated. So that's it.
Thank you. Oh, that's